Welcome to Software Development Methodologies. After watching this video, you will be able to list several commonly used approaches to the software development lifecycle, explain Waterfall, V-shape model, and Agile methods, and compare the pros and cons of each of these three methods. There are many ways to approach software development. A specific methodology for developing software is commonly used in order to assist the development team to clarify communication among team members and determine how and when the information is shared. In this video, we will discuss three of these approaches: Waterfall, V-shape model, and Agile. In the beginning, when the SDLC was conceived, it implemented what is known as the Waterfall method. Waterfall is a sequential method of software development where the output of one phase is the input for the next phase of the cycle. Development and work on the next phase start only after the completion of the previous phase. All planning, such as defining requirements and architectural design, is done up front. The customer usually does not see the product until it is in the testing phase. For a major version release of the product, the same process is repeated, resulting in long intervals, such as years, between releases. The V-shape model is named as such because the phases form the shape of a V. The phases going down the left side of the V are called verification. Then, going up the right side of the V, those phases are called validation. The V-shape model is like Waterfall in that it is also sequential. Each phase in verification corresponds with a validation phase. There are 4 stages that occur on each side of the V. Going down the V are planning, system design, architecture design, and then module design. The bottom of the V is the coding phase. And going back up the V are the 4 phases that correspond to the phases going down the V: unit testing, integration testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. The tests are written during the verification phases on the left and executed during the validation stages on the right. Now, the Agile model is different. It focuses on a collaborative software development process over multiple short cycles rather than a strictly top-down linear process. Agile is what is called an iterative approach to development. It still aligns with the SDLC, but each phase is short. Teams work in cycles, or sprints, which are usually 1 to 4 weeks long. Unit testing happens in each sprint to minimize the risk of failure. Rather than the maintenance stage of the SDLC, the final stage of the sprint is a feedback stage. At the end of each sprint, a chunk of working code is released at a meeting called the sprint demo, where stakeholders can see the new functionality and provide feedback. After the sprint demo, the entire process is repeated for every sprint cycle. After several sprint cycles, a minimum viable product, or MVP, is developed so stakeholders can provide feedback on the basic feature set. The MVP contains a feature set to validate assumptions about the software. The 4 core values of Agile development outlined in what is known as the Agile Manifesto are individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. The main difference between traditional SDLC methods, such as Waterfall and the V-shape model, compared to the Agile method of software development, is the former are sequential, whereas Agile is cyclical. Traditional SDLC methods, such as Waterfall and V-shape, center around the whole product being developed before soliciting customer feedback, whereas Agile focuses on quick, short bursts of development. There are pros and cons to each method, though Agile is probably the most popular method used in modern software development. Regarding the pros of the Waterfall method, it is easy to understand and follow. Each stage is discrete and well-defined, making it easy for all team members to understand their roles. Also, since planning is done up front, it is easier than iterative methods to estimate a budget and allocate resources. That said, Waterfall lacks flexibility. Since all planning is done up front, if a requirement is changed or overlooked, that change can be hard to incorporate at a later date. Inevitably, unforeseen complications happen or agreed upon functionality shifts from what was initially envisioned. Like Waterfall, the V-shaped model is simple and easy to use. It is even more rigid than Waterfall, but designing test plans during the verification phase saves considerable time during coding and validation phases. Drawbacks are also similar to Waterfall because it does not readily accommodate changing requirements. Once an application is in the testing phase, it is extremely difficult to go back and change functionality. Agile development is different, relying on ongoing research, planning, and testing during product development. When adding new features to a product, development still goes through the same phases as in traditional SDLC. But with Agile, new and changing requirements are handled quickly and easily because planning is initiated at the beginning of each sprint cycle. Most resources are spent on the building phase. At the end of each cycle, the QA team, stakeholders, and the customer have some piece of working code to test against requirements and are encouraged to provide feedback. As coding languages and technologies have developed in recent years, they now allow for modular design where developers can focus on smaller chunks of code that are readily integrated into the larger product. These small chunks can be released to provide the MVP. Cons of Agile are that upfront planning, such as budgeting and scheduling, can be challenging because the overall scope of the product is not clearly defined. In this video, you learned that 3 of the common approaches to software development include Waterfall, V-shape model, and Agile. Waterfall and V-shape are sequential, whereas Agile is iterative. Both Waterfall and V-shape models are easy to implement, but neither accommodates changing requirements well. And Agile allows for changing requirements, but resource allocation can be challenging.